Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Eamon Viana and Anjali Kitju.
Don't ever let them hurt you in any way. And never let them steal and take the best of you. Keep building cities from the ground. We rise and weave the wave. Don't ever let them hurt you in any way. And never let them steal and take the best of you. Keep building cities from the ground. We rise and weave the wave. Mother Nature has a way of warning us. A time bomb set on a lost countdown. Do you hear it? Will you stop it? Won't you listen? We need each other now. We need each other now. Each one of us needs one of us. We need each other. Keep building cities from the ground. We rise and weave the wave. Mother Nature has a way of warning us. A time bomb set on a lost countdown. Will you find it? Will you stop it? Won't you listen? Amesia me neva miale bene hiheyame. Amesia me kele kwancha erola nusilo. I know we are humans, but why can't we use the gift she's giving us? Mother Nature has a way of warning us. A time bomb set on a lost countdown. Do you hear it? Will you stop it? Won't you listen? We need each other now. We need each other now. Each one of us needs one of us. We need each other. Mother Nature has a way of warning us. A time bomb set on a lost countdown. Will you find it? Will you stop it? Won't you listen?
Thank you, Angelique and Amen, for this musical opening of the meeting. Your Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, distinguished heads of state and government, Excellencies, dear partners and friends of the World Economic Forum, a very cordial welcome to the 2023 annual meeting. We are coming together under the motto, Cooperation in a Fragmented World. At the beginning of this year, we are confronted with unprecedented and multiple challenges. First, our global economy is undergoing deep transformation. The energy transition, the consequences of COVID, the reshaping of supply chains are all serving as catalytic forces for the economic transformation. And the hotspots of this geo-economic remodeling are high inflation, increasing interest rates, and growing national debt. This is particularly hurting low and middle income groups. It is exacerbating societal fragmentation. Second, the geopolitical system is also undergoing deep systemic transformation. Internationally, we are moving to what some people would call a messy patchwork of powers. There are superpowers, emerging powers, middle powers, regional powers, rogue states, and also large corporate and social media powers, all competing increasingly for power and influence. As a result, the trend is again moving towards increased fragmentation and confrontation. Thirdly, our generation has reached a turning point, confronted by truly existential problems: climate change, exploitation of nature, nuclear possible incidents, or even wars, extreme poverty, and viruses. They all can lead to an extinction of large parts of our global population. And we have seen how much dealing with those risks, such as COVID or global warming, have again fragmented populations. And finally, the fourth industrial revolution offers us tremendous opportunities, but at the same time, technologies as computing, quantum computing, blockchain, genetics, and so on, they also could create deep societal fragmentation. We have the ability to collaboratively build a more peaceful, resilient, inclusive, and sustainable world. But to do so, we need to overcome the most critical fragmentation. And the most critical fragmentation is between those who take a constructive attitude and those who are just bystanders, observers, and even go into the negative, critical, and confrontational attitude. But the spirit of Davos is positive, is constructive. It means investing into a greener and therefore more sustainable economy, investing into a more cohesive society by providing everyone with the appropriate skills and opportunities, investing into the hard and soft infrastructure that modern societies require. And here in Davos, it means, despite all those challenges, it means particularly investing in the spirit and the practice of solving problems through mutual respect and cooperation. We believe that we can do it, that through collective responsibility, innovation, human goodwill, and ingenuity, we have the capacity to turn the challenges into opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, I have now the great pleasure and honor to introduce Alain Berset, President of the Swiss Confederation and Federal Counselor for the Federal Department of Internal Affairs. The World Economic Forum has been based in Switzerland for 53 years, and it is over this period the cooperation between the Swiss federal government, the canton of Graubünden, and the municipality of Davos the partnership has been truly exceptional. I would like to express, Mr. President, and all our Swiss hosts, our sincere gratitude for their hospitality and support all over those years. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the Confederation, to the President of the Swiss Confederation, Alain Berset.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear Professor Schwab, the post-war order is currently experiencing its greatest crisis. Russia's war of aggression on Ukraine constitutes a brutal attack on a peaceful country. But it is also a brutal attack on international law and multilateralism. The war is causing great suffering, and it is playing a decisive role on the global development of democracy. That is why the great solidarity shown by democratic countries with Ukraine is crucial. Solidarity with the people in the country, but also with those who have fled. And this aggression has come of all countries, from a member of the UN Security Council, which, and I quote from the UN Charter, bears primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. And in spite of this, or no, precisely because of this, Switzerland will make every effort to again strengthen international law and multilateralism. In the UN Security Council, for the first time this year, and through international Geneva, the seat of one of the most important multilateral platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, the world needs strong multilateral platforms because the greatest present-day challenges are transnational: climate change, pandemic, war, migration, proliferation. And this annual meeting is also an important platform for global dialogue. It is a place of optimism, of can-do spirits, and this is especially so in times of crisis. When I first attended the annual meeting back in 2012, the motto was the great transformation shaping new models. And it was a call to look to the future with optimism and to have confidence in the strength of our shared values and vision. But even at the time, WEF founder Klaus Schwab warned that inclusion is critical at a time when the number one risk to the world is rising inequality. And this warning has proven to be as accurate as it was far-sighted. For since then, inequality worldwide has continued to grow. The World Inequality Report 2022, which measures global wealth, income, gender, and ecological inequality, comes to the conclusion that inequality today is as great as it was 20 years ago. And all the fears expressed at the 2012 annual meeting have come true. Inequality brings with it huge political and social collateral damage. And what we call populism is essentially a reaction to growing inequality. We all know that extreme inequality undermines social cohesion. It creates resentment, causing us to seek scapegoats. And it is politically toxic, eating away at our faith in democracy. The number of democracies worldwide has diminished very much. According to Freedom House, around 50% of the world's population lived in democracies 10 years ago. And today, that figure is just 20%. And we find ourselves at a tipping point. Democratic institutions are being weakened. In certain places, the rule of law is under threat, even in some democratically constituted states. And the rule of law is also at risk of eroding in the international system. Business as usual is no longer an option. We must take steps to defend steadfastly the foundations that are a condition for civilized coexistence. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have given much thought, also here at the annual meeting, to efficiency and prosperity, but too little to social fairness. What applies in the domestic politics of most countries also applies in relations between states. And here too, inequality is growing at an alarming rate, and already fragile states are further weakened, first by climate change and the pandemic, and then by the war in Ukraine. Around 350 million people in 82 countries are currently at acute risk of hunger, according to the UN World Food Programme. That's 200 million more than before the pandemic and the war in Ukraine. In large parts of Africa, the consequences are dramatic. Before the war, 90% of grain supplied to Eritrea and Somalia came from Russia and Ukraine. And the sharp rises in the price of fertilizer and oil have a huge impact on the continent's poorest countries, weakening them further still. The COVID pandemic also hit already fragile states hardest. Inequality increased significantly, and what is particularly difficult to accept is that prior to 2020, African countries were among the fastest growing in the world. Yes, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, many countries in Africa, just as many parts of the world, have been weakened by this terrible war and seen their ambition reduced. But that does not diminish the importance of these countries. It does, however, require a rethink. It needs an active global partnership, a partnership that recognizes the enormous potential of countries in Africa and strengthens human rights and democracy, a partnership that addresses humanitarian needs as well as supports economic opportunities and innovation. Inequalities are not eliminated by charity. Take the example of COVID-19 vaccines. Promises were made to help fragile countries, Switzerland too, lent its financial and political support to the COVAX initiative of the World Health Organization, which wanted to achieve equitable access to vaccines worldwide. But when it came to distributing vaccines, there was little evidence of that kind of partnership. In light of the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, we have seen that the risk of fragility is no longer a one-way street. The problems experienced by fragile states do not remain within their own borders. They are always exported to neighboring countries, but also to far-flung regions in the form of migration, corruption, terrorism. And we must do all we can to support fragile states, otherwise they risk becoming failed states. And that is why Switzerland will work systematically on behalf of the most vulnerable, in particular to protect the civilian population and improve food security. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, fragility poses a threat to all of us. That is true domestically, but it is also true internationally. Self-interests and supporting those weaker than ourselves. We have long considered these to be two different things, but now we know they are one and they are the same. Thank you very much.
Madam Zelenska, First Lady of Ukraine, it's a great honor to have you at our annual meeting in Davos. Thank you for coming. We know it has been a difficult journey. It's been almost a year since Russia invaded your country, sparking a war that has cost far too many Ukrainian lives. Tens of thousands, many of them civilians, many of them children. The largest refugee crisis in the 21st century, and millions internally displaced. Amid this profound crisis, Ukrainians have stood strong in common cause, galvanized by the leadership of President Zelensky and yourself, Madam First Lady. It has inspired many around the world and in this room. Madam Zelenska, since the beginning of the war, you have been an ambassador and advocate for your country and its people. You have been a powerful voice in global capitals and have worked tirelessly to address the human impact of the war, helping people access healthcare, mental care, education, and other resources they need during this difficult time. Your leadership is ensuring Ukraine and Ukrainians are stronger today and are on a path for even a stronger tomorrow. We are very eager to hear from you on what lies ahead. Madam Zelenska, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Вітаю, пані та панове.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Put on your forms. So. Вітаю, пані та панове,
Good morning,
шановні
ladies and
представники і
gentlemen,
представниці
the
світу,
representatives of the world
які сьогодні тут,
who are here today
в Європі,
in Europe,
Швейцарії,
in Switzerland,
Давосі.
in Davos.
Погляньте, будь ласка, на цей
Please
зал.
take a look at this hall.
Скільки
See the
і
number
яких
and the kind
тут людей?
of people here.
Скільки і
The
яких
number and
учасників
the
братимуть
kind of the
участь
people who will be taking
в
part
заходах форуму?
in the events of this forum.
Лідери держав,
Heads of states,
голови міжнародних
chiefs of
організацій,
international organizations,
лідери бізнесу,
business leaders,
провідні економісти,
prominent
громадські
economists,
діячі,
public figures,
журналісти,
journalists
науковці.
and scientists.
Люди, які мають значення
People have
для
influence
цілих
for
галузей,
entire
народів,
industries, for
для всього
nations,
світу.
and for the world as a whole.
Вас усіх об'єднує те,
You're all united
що
by the fact
ви дійсно
that you
впливові.
are really very influential.
Але є дещо, що вас
But there's also something
роз'єднує.
that separates you,
А саме не всі
and that is
із вас
that not all of you
використовують цей
are
вплив.
using this influence.
Або часом використовують
Or
так,
sometimes
що
you use it
це
in a
ще
way
більше
that divides
роз'єднує.
even more.
Таке зібрання, як Давоський форум,
A
існує,
meeting
бо
such
всі
as
ми
the Davos
внутрішньо
Forum
впевнені, що
exists
немає
because deep inside we
такої
all
глобальної
believe that there is
проблеми,
no
яку
global
людство
problem
не може
that the
вирішити.
humanity,
Нам
that mankind
вистачить
would not be
сил та
able to
енергії.
resolve. We have enough energy
Сума
and strength for it.
об'єднаного впливу
The
більша,
sum of
ніж
our
вага існуючих
combined
викликів.
influence is bigger
Але
than
щоб
the
була
weight of
сума,
existing
має бути
challenges. But for
складання
there to
її
be a
складових,
sum, we need to
тобто глобальна
to
співпраця.
add its components, its
І
parts,
тим
and that's
більше
global
це важливо
cooperation.
зараз,
And
коли
it is all the more
агресія
important
Росії в
right now when
Європі
Russia's aggression in
складає
Europe
різні виклики,
makes
які поставили перед
various
світом в
challenges
одну
facing the world and
повномасштабну
wraps them
кризу.
into one large-scale crisis.
Зараз є загроза обвалу того життя, до
We are
якого
facing a threat
звикли
of
люди
a
в світі,
collapse of
або
the
до
world
якого
as we know
прагнуть
it,
люди в світі.
the way that we are accustomed to it, or
Яким може
to
бути
what we
життя у
aspire.
світі, якщо буде
What can be
дозволено
life in a world
бити з
where
танків по
tanks are
атомним
allowed
станціям?
to strike at nuclear power stations?
Що буде з інфляційними процесами,
What will
коли
happen to
будуть падати
inflation
державні
when
кордони
state
і
borders
цілісність
start to
країн буде
collapse and the
руйнуватися
integrity
тими,
of
хто цього
countries will
хоче?
be trampled on by those who want
Що буде
it?
з вартістю життя,
What will happen to
коли
the cost
не
of
мільйони,
living
а
when
десятки
millions,
мільйонів
not millions,
людей
but
будуть
tens of
змушені
millions of
рятувати
people
своє
will be
життя,
forced to
рятуватись
flee
від масового голоду
mass
і стануть
starvation
біженцями?
and will become refugees?
Як світ хоче досягти
How does the
кліматичної
world want to
нейтральності,
achieve climate
якщо
neutrality
поки не
if
зупинив
so far
навіть
it hasn't even
спалення
stopped
цілих міст
the
в
burning of
Україні?
entire cities in
Це те, що
Ukraine?
робить Росія
This is what
своєю
Russia is doing
артилерією,
with its
ракетами,
artillery, with its
іранськими дронами.
missiles, with its
І ви всі
Iranian
знаєте,
drones.
що
And you
російська
know
агресія
that
ніколи
the
не мала
Russian
на меті
aggression was never
обмежитися українською
intended to
територією.
restrict itself
Ця
to the
війна може
Ukrainian
піти
borders.
далі
This
і
war
зробити
can go
кризи
further and
ширшими,
make
якщо агресор не
crises
програє.
wider if the aggressor does not
Або
lose.
іншими словами, якщо
In other
сума
words, if
нашого
the
з вами
sum of
впливу
our influence
не переважить
does not
агресію.
outweigh the aggression.
Пані та панове,
Ladies and
мій
gentlemen,
чоловік,
my
президент
husband,
України,
the president of Ukraine,
звертаючись до лідерів
when he addressed the
19
leaders
найбільш
of
економічно
19
потужних держав,
states who
запропонував
are
їм та
economically
всьому
the most
світу
powerful,
формулу,
offered
як
them
стати
and to
найбільш
the whole world the
потужними в
formula about how we
миротворчості.
can become the most powerful in
Це 10
peacekeeping.
пунктів.
It's a
Пунктів про те, як
10-point
переважити
It's 10
російську
points about
агресію,
how
а отже
we
про те,
outweigh the
як не
Russian
допустити
aggression
поєднання
and how we
наявних
prevent
регіональних та
existing
глобальних криз в
regional
одну
global crisis from
повномасштабну
converging into one
загальносвітову
full-scale,
кризу.
full-on global
Я хочу
crisis.
підкреслити,
I
це
want to
пункти
emphasize that
не
these points
суто політичні.
are not purely
У кожного
political.
з
Each
цих
one of
пунктів
them
є
has a
відчутний людський
tangible
рівень.
human dimension.
Це рівень батьків,
This
які
is the
плачуть
dimension of parents
під реанімацією,
who
коли
are crying
рятують
in an
їхню
ICU
поранену
where
дитину,
doctors are trying to fight for
або
the
хлопчика,
life of their wounded child.
чию сім'ю розстріляли в автівці
Or a boy
під час
whose family
окупації,
was shot
під час
by the
евакуації.
occupiers as they were trying to
Це рівень
evacuate.
фермерів, які зараз бояться повертатися на свої поля через те, що поля заміновані окупантами. Це рівень людей, які, втративши дім, змушені шукати порятунку там, де їх приймуть. Я прошу вас дивитися на потребу в зупинці агресії саме так. Як подивилися б на це люди, чиє життя руйнує країна-агресор. Коли ми кажемо у формулі миру про радіаційну і ядерну безпеку, ми маємо на увазі, що не можемо допустити появи нового Чорнобиля. Ми не хочемо, щоб діти десь у світі були змушені вчитися, як зберегтися від променевої хвороби. Коли ми кажемо у формулі миру про продовольчу безпеку, ми маємо на увазі, що право на їжу має кожна людина. І це принизливо для людства і самої людськості, що у 21 столітті десь у світі можливий масовий голод, тим більше можливий через збройну агресію якоїсь божевільної держави. Коли ми кажемо про енергетичну безпеку, це те, щоб жодній дитині в світі не доводилося робити уроки при свічках, як зараз дітям в Україні. Або щоб жоден лікар не мусив робити операції під світ ліхтарів, як це було нещодавно у Львові та в Києві. Для мене найболючіший пункт формули – це звільнення усіх полонених та депортованих. Тих тисяч українців, яких вивезли в Росію, і яким брешуть, що нібито ніхто їм не допоможе. Не тільки вони переживають тортури. Тортури невизначеності переживають їхні родини. Це і про тисячі дітей, яких ми мусимо захистити від руйнування їхнього зв'язку з рідними, з батьківщиною, які чинить Росія, віддаючи тисячі українських дітей на всиновлення, незаконне всиновлення російські родини. Це не просто спроба Росії стерти пам'ять їм про те, хто вони є. Це злочин проти самої суті батьківства, проти того, що спокон віку об'єднує матір і дитину, батька і дитину. Кожна людина має право на життя. Тому окремий пункт формули миру – це виведення російських військ з усієї суверенної території України. Завдяки цьому гарантоване припинення бойових дій та терору окупантів проти українців. Це буде відновлення сили міжнародного права та статуту ООН. Але суто з людського боку, на окупованих російської території просто наші люди, розділені з родинами, вони чекають на звільнення. І поки цього немає, мільйони людей мусять переживати страх і російські репресії. Ще один пункт формули – це справедливість. Це те, чого вимагає гідність кожної людини, що загинула під завалами власного будинку. Це те, чого вимагають діти й дорослі, які втратили кінцівки через російський удар. Кожен, хто виживав в підвалах Маріуполя, поки його місто стирали з лиця землі російські снаряди і бомби. Кожен, хто мріяв про порятунок в Бучі, ховаючись від російських катів. Справедливість потрібна, щоб ніхто в світі ніколи не думав, ніби воєнні злочини та геноцидна політика можуть залишитися безкарними. Це потрібно не лише живим та загиблим українцям. Це потрібно світові, щоб ніхто не думав, що насильство можна повторити. Формула миру повертає безпеку не тільки людям. Кожен, хто бачив понівечену землю після російських обстрілів, спалені ліси, закриті території через тисячі різних мін. Кожен розуміє, яка травмована природа може залишитися наступним поколінням. Я постійно намагаюся донести, що в Україні немає повністю безпечних місць, І,
No
на жаль,
place which is
вихідних
completely safe.
від
And
війни.
unfortunately, also you can't take a day off from
Кожному,
war.
хто в Україні,
Everyone who is
щодня
now in
доводиться
Ukraine
ризикувати
has
життям.
to risk his or her life every
В Росії
day.
немає табу.
There is
Прямо зараз в
nothing
нашому
off
місті
limits for
Дніпро
Russia. As we speak,
триває
in our
розбив
city
завалів
of
житлового
Dnipro,
будинку,
people are
який
still
був зруйнований
working
протикорабельною
and
ракетою.
sorting through the debris of a residential area of a
Російські
house that
військові
was
запустили
destroyed
ракету, яку створювали,
by an
щоб
anti-ship
знищувати
missile.
авіаносці проти
This
звичайної
missile
цивільної
was
інфраструктури.
built to destroy aircraft carriers and
Сьогодні
was
зранку було
used
відомо про 40
against the
загиблих.
civilian infrastructure.
Поки ми
This
розпочинали
morning
цей
we heard
форум,
about 43
ця цифра
casualties.
зросла
When
до
we
43 людей.
Since we started this
Вони
forum,
просто були
it grew to
вдома в
43
суботу.
casualties. These were people, ordinary people at
Цього
home on a
достатньо для
Saturday,
Росії,
and
щоб
that's enough reason for
вбивати.
Russia to kill.
Саме тому 9-й пункт
And that's why
нашої
the
формули
9th point
миру
of our
про
formula
гарантоване
is
недопущення
about guaranteed
ескалації.
non-escalation.
І, звичайно,
And
має
of
бути
course,
фіксація
At some
завершення
point,
цієї
we have
війни.
to pronounce an
Не
end to
лише для
this
того, щоб
war.
мати якусь
Not
дату
only so we have a
для
date,
відліку мирного часу,
so that we can
тому
reset
що
the
мир
time and start counting
не
peace
дорівнює
time,
перемир'ю.
because peace does not equal a
Щоб
truce.
змогли повертатися додому наші люди,
It's so
які
that our people
зараз розкидані по
can
світу.
return home,
Щоб з
who are
фронту
scattered around the
повернулися
world right
наші
now, so that
батьки,
our fathers,
матері,
our
сини і
mothers, sons and
доньки.
daughters can
Щоб
return from the
знову
front line.
з'єдналися сім'ї,
For
які були
families to
роз'єднані
reunite,
війною.
the families that were torn apart by
Пані
the
та
war.
панове,
Ladies
єднання
and
– це
gentlemen,
те,
unity
що повертає
is
мир.
what brings peace back.
Сьогодні я передаю колегам-учасникам цієї частини
And today I would like to hand
формулу,
over to my colleagues,
листи
my counterparts
від президента України,
of the forum, letters from the President of
Алена
Ukraine,
Версе,
to Mr.
президенту
Alan
Швейцарської
Verse, the President of the
Конфедерації,
Swiss Confederation,
пані
to
Урсулі
Mrs.
фон дер Ляєн,
Ursula von
президентці
der Leyen, the
Європейської
President of the
комісії.
European Commission,
І лист,
And
що
also
адресований
a letter addressed
лист
to-
адресований пану Сі Цзіньпіню,
to Mr. Xi
голові
Jinping,
Китайської Народної
the head
Республіки,
of
я
the,
передаю пану Лю Хе,
People's Republic
віце-прем'єру
of
Державної
China.
ради
I
країни.
hand it over to Mr. Liu He,
Є давне
the Vice Premier
прислів'я.
of the State Council of China.
Якщо люди
There's an old saying,
згуртуються,
if people come
то й
together,
гору Тайшань перенесуть.
they can move even Mount
І ми віримо, що світ
Taishan.
згуртується
And we
заради
believe
миру.
that the world will unite for peace.
Україна вже отримала відповіді.
Ukraine has already
Позитивні
received answers, some
відповіді
positive
від
answers
багатьох
from
лідерів
many
держав
of
про
heads of
готовність
states
співпрацювати
about
заради
their
реалізації
readiness to
формули миру.
work together on the
І цей
peace
рік
formula.
може не стати
This year
роком
may
полікризи,
not become the
про
year
яку
of the
всі
poly
говорять.
crisis that we hear about.
Якщо це стане роком
If it
української
becomes a
формули миру,
year
яка буде
of the
реалізована.
Ukrainian peace formula, which will come true.
Я дякую вам за увагу.
Thank you.
Слава Україні!
Glory to Ukraine.
Dear Madam President von der Leyen, liebe Ursula, at a time in history, as we have seen also in the speech of the First Lady, at a time in history during which unprecedented, unimaginable challenges demand exceptional leaders, it is a deep honor to have you with us to present your vision for the future of Europe and Europe's role in the world. I'm convinced that your commitment and your visionary leadership to a stronger and closer union, particularly during those times where Europe is really tested, have been so essential, your leadership, and will continue to be so. Madam President, we are excited to have us with you today. The stage is yours.
Your Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, lieber Klaus, my dearest Olena, for almost 1 year now, Ukraine has stunned the world. On that fateful February morning, many predicted that Kyiv would fall in a matter of days. But this did not account for the morale and the physical courage of Ukrainian people. Dearest Olena, you and your people, you have resisted the Russian invasion and pushed back against the aggressor, against all odds. Not even Russia's relentless attacks on civilians, and you have described them, or the specter of a brutal winter have shaken your resolve. In this last year, your country has moved the world and has inspired Europe. And I can assure you that Europe will always stand with you. Many doubted whether that European support would be so unwavering. But today, Ukraine is a candidate country to access the European Union. European countries are providing more and more critical weapons to Ukraine. We're hosting around 4 million Ukrainians in our cities, our homes, and our schools. And we have put in place the strongest sanctions ever, which leave the Russian economy facing a decade of regression and its industry starved of any modern and critical technologies. There will be no impunity for these Russian crimes. And, my friends, there will be no let-up in our steadfast support to Ukraine, from helping to restore power, heating and water, to preparing for the long-term effort of reconstruction. And to reaffirm that support, we announced yesterday that the Commission is delivering 3 billion euros of financial support. This is the first tranche of our 18 billion support package for 2023, the largest ever macrofinancial assistance to a third country. This is a strong message, and this will bolster Ukraine's financial stability, help to pay wages, ensure the running of hospitals and housing services and schools. I just want to say, my dearest Olena, and I think I can speak on behalf of this hall and this audience here, we are in it for as long as it takes and stand by our Ukrainian friends. And Europe's reaction to the war is the latest example in how our union has pulled together when it matters the most. Take energy. A year ago, Europe had a massive dependency on Russian fossil fuels built over decades. This made us vulnerable to supply squeezes, price hikes, and of course vulnerable to Putin's market manipulation. In less than a year, Europe has overcome this dangerous dependency. We have replaced 80% of Russian pipeline gas. In parallel, we have filled our storages. Of course, we have reduced our demand by more than 20% in the period from August to November. And through collective effort, we brought down gas prices quicker than anyone expected. From its peak in August, this was 350 euros per megawatt hour. It is now European natural gas prices dropped by 80% by this month. That is below the levels of before the Ukraine war. Europe has once again shown the power of its collective will. Nevertheless, we should be under no illusion how difficult these periods, first of pandemic and then followed by a war, are for our families and for our businesses. And we will have to show the same resolve as we face up to a collision of crises. Dear Klaus, as your global risk report sets it out, we see rising inflation, making the cost of living and the cost of doing business more expensive. We see energy being used as a weapon. We see threats of trade wars and the return of confrontational geopolitics. In addition, climate change already comes with a huge cost. And we have no time to lose in the transition to a clean economy. And that's what I want to speak about. The net zero transformation is already causing huge industrial, economic, and geopolitical shifts, by far the quickest and the most pronounced in our lifetime. It is changing the nature of work. It is reshaping the nature of our industry. But we are on the brink of something far greater. Just think, in less than 3 decades, we want to reach net zero. In less than 3 decades, we have to reach net zero. But the road to net zero means developing and using a whole range of new clean technologies across our economy, in transport, in buildings, in manufacturing, in energy. The next decades will see the greatest industrial transformation of our times, maybe of any times. And those who develop and manufacture the technology that will be the foundation of tomorrow's economy will have the greatest competitive edge. So the scale of the opportunity is clear for all to see. The International Energy Agency estimates that the market for mass-manufactured clean energy tech will be worth around $650 billion a year by 2030, more than triple today's levels. To get ahead of the competition, we need to keep investing in strengthening our industrial base and making Europe more investment and innovation friendly. And that is what investors are looking closely at in the different markets for clean tech. Here in Europe, we moved first with the European Green Deal to set the path to climate neutrality by 2050. We have cast our net zero target into law to provide the predictability and the transparency business needs. We followed up with our investment firepower of Next Generation EU, that is our 800 billion investment plan, the Just Transition Fund and other instruments across the economy. This is unprecedented investment in clean technology across all sectors of the green transition. Clean tech is now the fastest growing investment sector in Europe, doubling its value between 2020 and 2021 alone. And the good news for the planet is that other major economies are also now stepping up. Japan's green transformation plan aims to help raise up to 20 trillion yen, around 140 billion euros, through green transition bonds. India has put forward the production-linked incentive scheme to enhance their competitiveness in sectors like solar photovoltaics and batteries. The United Kingdom, Canada, and many others have also put forward their investment plans in clean tech. And of course, we have seen the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States, that $369 billion clean tech investment plan. That means that together, the European and the United States alone are putting forward almost €1 trillion to accelerate the clean energy economy. This has the potential to massively boost the path to climate neutrality. But it is no secret that certain elements of the design of the Inflation Reduction Act raised a number of concerns in terms of some of the targeted incentives for companies. So this is why we have been working with our United States friends to find solutions, for example, so that EU companies and EU-made electric cars can also benefit from the Inflation Reduction Act. Our aim should be to avoid disruptions in transatlantic trade and investment. We should ensure that our respective incentive programs are fair and mutually reinforcing. And we should also set out how we can jointly benefit from this massive investment, for example, by creating economies of scale across the Atlantic or setting common standards. At the heart of the joint vision is our conviction that competition and trade are the key to speeding up clean tech and climate neutrality. And that means that we, Europeans, also need to get better at nurturing our own clean tech industry. We know that we have a small window to invest in clean energy and innovation and clean tech before the fossil fuel economy becomes obsolete. So we have an industry at the moment being challenged by the pandemic, supply chain issues and price shocks. We see aggressive attempts to attract our industrial capacities away to China and elsewhere. We have a compelling need to make this net zero transition without creating new dependency. We've learned our lessons from the fossil fuels. And we know that future investment decisions will be taken now, depending on what we do today. We Europeans have a plan, a Green Deal industrial plan. Our plan to make Europe the home of clean tech and industrial innovation on the road to net zero. Our Green Deal industrial plan will be covering 4 different pillars: the regulatory environment, financing, skills, and trade. The first pillar is about speed and access. We need to create a regulatory environment that allows us to scale up fast and to create conducive conditions for sectors crucial to reach the net zero goal that we've set ourselves. This includes, for example, wind, heat pumps, solar, clean hydrogen, storage, and other topics, for which demand is boosted by our next generation EU and Repower EU investments. To help make this happen, we will put forward a new Net Zero Industry Act. This will follow the same model as our CHIPS Act. The new Net Zero Industry Act will identify clear goals for European clean tech by 2030. The aim will be to focus investment on strategic projects along the entire supply chain. We will especially look at how to simplify and fast-track the permitting process for clean tech production sites. In parallel to this Net Zero Industry Act, we will reflect on how to make important projects of common European interest, the famous IPCEIs, faster to process, easier to fund, simpler to access for small and medium enterprises and for all our member states. The Net Zero Industry Act will go hand in hand with the critical Raw Materials Act. For rare earths, which are vital for manufacturing key technologies like wind power generation, hydrogen storage, you name it. Europe is today 98% dependent on one country, China. Or take lithium, with just 3 countries accounting for more than 90% of the lithium production, the entire supply chain has become incredibly tight. This has pushed up prices and is threatening our competitiveness, so we need to improve the refining, processing and recycling of raw materials here in Europe. And in parallel, work with partners to cooperate on sourcing, production and processing to overcome the existing monopoly. To do this, we can build a critical raw materials club, working with like-minded partners from the United States to Ukraine to collectively strengthen supply chains and to diversify away from single monopoly. This is Pillar 1, speed and access through the Net Zero Industry Act. The second pillar of the Green Deal Industrial Plan will boost investment and financing of clean tech production. To keep European industry attractive, there is a need to be competitive with offers and incentives that are currently available outside the European Union. This is why we will propose to temporarily adapt our state aid rules to speed up and simplify them. Easier calculations, simpler procedures, accelerated approvals. For example, simple tax break models. And with targeted aid for production facilities and strategic clean tech value chains to counter relocation risks from foreign subsidies. But we also know that state aid will only be a limited solution which only a few member states can use. Now, to avoid fragmenting of the single market and to support the clean tech transition across the whole Union, we must also step up EU funding. For the medium term, we will prepare a European Sovereignty Fund as part of the midterm review of our budget this year. This will provide a structural solution to boost the resources available for upstream research, innovation and strategic industrial projects. But as this will take time, we will look at a bridging solution where it is most needed to provide fast and targeted support. And to support this, we are currently working hard on a needs assessment. So the second pillar is funding and state aid. The third pillar of the Green Deal Industrial Plan will be developing the needed skills to make this transition happen. The best technology is only as good as the skilled workers who can install and operate it. And with a huge growth in new technologies, we will need a huge growth in skills and skilled workers in this sector. This will cut across all we do, whether it is regulation or finance, and will be the priority of our European Year of Skills. The fourth pillar will be to facilitate open and fair trade to the benefit of all. For clean tech to deliver net zero globally, there will be a need for strong and resilient supply chains. Our economies will rely ever more on international trade as the transition speeds up to open more markets and to access the input needed for the industry. So we need an ambitious trade agenda, including by making the most, for example, out of the existing trade agreements, for example with Canada, or for example with the United Kingdom, with which we are trying hard to sort out our difficulties. We're working on concluding agreements with Mexico, Chile, New Zealand and Australia, and to make progress with India and Indonesia. And we need to restart a conversation regarding the Mercosur agreement, because international trade is key to helping our industry cut costs, create jobs, and develop new products. But by the same token, where trade is not fair, we must respond more robustly. China has made boosting clean tech innovation and manufacturing a key priority of its 5-year plan. That's good. It dominates global production in sectors like electric vehicles and solar panels, which are essential for the transition. But competition on net zero must be based on a level playing field. China has been openly encouraging energy-intensive companies in Europe and elsewhere to relocate all or part of their production. They do so with the promise of cheap energy, low labor costs, and a more lenient regulatory environment. At the same time, China heavily subsidizes its industry and restricts access to its market for European Union companies. We still need to work and trade with China, especially when it comes to this transition. So we need to refocus our approach on de-risking rather than decoupling. This means using all our tools to deal with unfair practices, including the new foreign subsidies regulation. And we will not hesitate to open investigations if we consider that our procurement or other markets are being distorted by such subsidies. We want to cooperate, we want to work together. Climate change needs a global approach, but it has to be a fair approach and a level playing field. Ladies and gentlemen, the story of the clean tech economy is still being written. And over the years I've been coming to Davos, I've heard many times that we are on the cusp of a period of creative destruction that the economist Joseph Schumpeter spoke of. His idea that innovation and new tech replaces the old, leaving the old industry and jobs behind. In many ways, this dynamic applies to the clean tech revolution of today and tomorrow. But I believe if Europe gets it right, the story of clean tech economy can be one of creative construction, with the right support and incentives for companies to innovate, with the right focus on skills and people, with the right environment to make the most out of our world-leading innovation capacity. Europe already has everything it takes: talent, researchers, industrial capacity, investment. And Europe has a plan for the future. And this is why I believe the story of the clean tech economy will be written in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for this clear, comprehensive, upbeat and future-oriented vision which you laid out for Europe. We have time for just maybe 1 or 2 questions, if you agree. And when you were here last time, we started to discuss the need to come together also for reconstruction of Ukraine. And now, of course, it may sound premature, but we have to prepare ourselves. Could you say some words?
Absolutely, absolutely. It is not premature. It is up and running since this month. We started the reconstruction platform because it includes repair and relief right now. And Ukraine needs repair and relief right now, then to go slowly but surely into the reconstruction. And indeed, the political leadership is with G7. The motor, the engine, is with the Secretariat, with the European Commission in Brussels and in Kyiv together with our Ukrainian friends. And it is of utmost importance that, on one hand, globally we raise the necessary investment for reconstruction, but that, on the other hand, at the same time, we do the necessary reforms to move forward. Ukraine wants to become a member of the European Union, and it is a perfect opportunity to take investment and reform to pave this way for Ukraine towards the European Union. And my call on you is, we need every helping hand on board. Ukraine deserves to have as much support as possible. And what we need is not only investment with the public sector, but the private investment and your knowledge. You know so much in your respective fields. So we need your knowledge. We need every hand on board to really move forward with repair, relief at the very beginning, but also reconstruction. The people of Ukraine really deserve it.
Ursula, you have laid out the revitalization efforts for Europe. I would like to come back with maybe the last question to the role Europe is playing globally and in terms of, the geopolitical leadership, security and values. You have touched upon some of those points. But I know in addition to all your different initiatives, there is the Global Gateway initiative. I think since it concerns many of the partners of Europe, maybe you would like to say something about it.
Global Gateway is our 300 billion investment plan for infrastructure abroad for the next 5 years. There's a huge need for investment in infrastructure, and we want to be the offer as a partner where there is the investment in the infrastructure coupled with the added value that stays locally, transparency, and reliability and predictability. And I give you some examples what the Global Gateway investment is in, for example. I've spoken about the enormous dependency of the European Union of Russian fossil fuels before Russia unleashed the war against Ukraine. The European Union was the biggest client for pipeline gas worldwide, and Russia was the biggest supplier worldwide. And this huge demand of the European Union is now completely shifted away from Russia. We have completely decoupled and diversified away. But this demand, of course, is looking for new, trusted, long-term suppliers. And we have to be very careful that we do not create a lock-in effect in fossil fuels, but that we use this opportunity to leapfrog forward into clean energy. And here comes the opportunity of Global Gateway. Our friends, for example, on the African continent have resources for renewable energy in abundance. What is missing is the infrastructure. And therefore, there we have a common interest that Global Gateway is investing in infrastructure for green hydrogen, for example, solar panel, wind, but also other possibilities, so that this infrastructure is being built up with a common interest on both sides, that we want the added value fairly placed and predictable. Another example is the topic of vaccines. We learned our lesson in the pandemic that it is not sustainable if vaccines have to be donated. The African continent, our African friends, want the technology, rightly so. And therefore the mRNA technology has been brought to different countries. There, with private partners, Global Gateway is building up, together with our African friends, manufacturing capacities for vaccines in order to give the opportunity and have the next time that we have the need for vaccines, the technology on the African continent manufactured in Africa for Africa, and all the possibilities that are in this new revolutionary mRNA technology. Two very recent examples that show what Global Gateway is all about.
Madam President, in the beginning, and I just said we want to have here at this meeting a let's do it attitude, and we have the capabilities. I think your speech this morning provided the best example of the let's do forward-looking attitude, and we have to be also clear that we have to do the necessary investments. And I just want to highlight one point, the necessary investments into the skills which we need in the future. So we wish you all a very good, how should I say, progress in all those visionary initiatives. And thank you again for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated for the upcoming session. Ladies.
It's my great pleasure and honor to introduce His Excellency Liu He, Vice Premier of the State Council of the People's Republic of China. In the past 3 years, the world has been undergoing tremendous changes with many challenges: the pandemic, the war in Europe, the slowing economy, the energy crisis, food crisis, supply chain instability, climate change, and I could go on. The world is becoming even more fragmented, and we must seek cooperation in this fragmented world. Since China started its opening up and reform process over 40 years ago, the country has made great contributions to the development of the global economy. Yet, the world is in transformation, and we are all focused to rethink our development models. The global community, Your Excellency, is eager to understand the next chapter of China's development strategy, both domestically and globally, particularly after the Communist Party's 20th Congress. And we would like to know the opportunities in China and how we can work together with China to tackle the collective challenges that the world is facing. Cooperation instead of fragmentation. As Director of the Office of the Central Commission for Finance and Economy, Director of the Financial Stability and Development Committee of the State Council, Head of the leading group for National Science and Technology System Reform and Innovation Systems Development, Vice Premier Liu has played a key role and key roles in China's economy, financial and technology sector, as well as China's international cooperation for over 30 years now. He is a recognized leader and a well-known person internationally. Today, we all need to work together to make progress in this fragmented world. We firmly believe that China will play and can play an important role, so we are all keen to hear your perspectives. Mr. Vice Premier, of China, how much will China assume a responsive and responsible role to avoid further fragmentation in the world? Please welcome Vice Premier Liu He.
尊敬的司法部主席
Dr. Klaus Schwab,
尊敬的女士们、先生们、
ladies
朋
and
友们，
gentlemen,
大
friends,
家上午好。
good morning.
我非常感谢司法部先生的
Let
邀
me
请，
begin by thanking Dr.
让我有
Schwab
机会再次
for
来到
inviting me
美丽的达沃斯
to。Davos again.
我上次参加达沃斯论坛是
The
2018
last time I came here
5 年
was
的时间过去
2018.
了，
Over the past
我们
5 years,
经历了各种出乎意料
we
的
have
事件，
experienced all kinds of unexpected
世
events
界政治经济图景
and witnessed
已经发
profound
生深刻的
changes
变
in the
化。
world's political and economic landscape.
在这样的背景下，今年的年会以 在
Therefore,
分裂的世界
the theme
中
of this year's
加
annual
强合
meeting,
作为主
cooperation
题，
in a
我们认
fragmented
为
world
意义重大。
cannot be more relevant.
相互了解是加强合作的基础。
Mutual understanding is an important
最近以来
prerequisite for
我们一直
cooperation.
在进行线上的交流，
We've been
但
conducting
是我们发
online
现技术
communications
手段再
recently,
先进，也
but we
替代不了
realized
人
that
和
no
人
matter
之间
how
面
technologically
对面
advanced
的交流
it。is,
最近
is no
2天以来
substitute，for
我有
in-person
机会
meetings.
见到很多的老朋友，感到
I
非
had
常的
quite
温暖。
a number of very warm meetings with
借这
some
个
old
机会，
friends these 2
请允
days.
许我向大家简要的介绍一下中
At
国
this
的经济
face-to-face
的情
event,
况。
I hope I
大
can
家
help
知
you
道
understand the Chinese economy
，2022
better.
年中国顺利完成了国内的
In
重要
2022,
的政治议
China
程，
completed its major
成
political
功召
agenda.
开中共20大，
We held the
选举
20th
了
National
以习近
Congress
平
of the
为主
Communist
席
Party of
的
China
新的中央领
and
导集
elected
体，
the new central leadership with President Xi
计
Jinping
划了
at its
未来
core.
5年乃至更长
We
时
drew
期
an
中国
ambitious
式
blueprint
现代化
for
的
advancing
宏伟蓝
Chinese
图。
modernization in the coming 5 years
我们
and
不久
beyond.
前召开了中国的年度中央
Last
经济工
month,
作会
we
议。
held the annual Central
我
Economic
们按
Work
照中
Conference
共20大的精神，
to make
对
plans
今年的经济工作
for this
进
year
行了全
in
面的
line with
部
the
署。
development of the 20th CPC National Congress.
从去年的情况看，中国经济增长
Last year,
3%，
China's growth was
保持了就
3%,
业、物价基本
and we
稳定。
managed to keep jobs and
城
prices
乡调
stable.
查失业率5.6%，
Urban surveyed
居民消
unemployment
费
rate
价格
was
指数
5.6%,
2%，
CPI was
经常
2%,
项目顺差占
and the current
GDP 的
account
比重
surplus
略微超过
was
2%。
slightly above 2% of GDP.
2023年，我们将坚持稳中
In
求进
2023,
工作总
we will
基调，
continue to work to make
继
progress
续实
while
施
maintaining
积极的
stability
财政政策
and follow
和
a
稳健的货币
proactive
政
fiscal
策，
policy and a
努力保
prudent
持
monetary
合理的
policy.
经济增
We
长
will，strive to maintain
保持
reasonable
物
economic
价
growth
和就业
and keep
总体稳定。
prices and jobs stable.
我们有一个工作的重点，就是要
Our focus
着力扩大
will
国
be
内需
placed
求，
on expanding domestic demand,
推动产业链、供应链
keeping
循
industrial
环畅通。
and supply chains
我们
smooth,
将支持民营经济健康发展，
supporting the healthy development
深化
of
国有
private
企业改
sector,
更。
deepening
我们欢迎
state-owned
更多的外
enterprises
资
reform,
来华投资，
attracting foreign investment,
防范化解
and preventing
经济金融风
and
险。
diffusing economic and
我
financial
们
risks.
相信，经过努力，
If we work hard enough,
2023
we are
年
confident
中国经济
that
会实现
in
整体性的好转，
China's growth will most likely return to its
经济
normal
增长
trend.
速度达到正
And the
常水
Chinese economy will see
平
a
是
significant
大概率
improvement.
的事件。我们也预计今年中国的进口会明显的增加，
A
企业
noticeable
的投
increase
资
of
会
import,
大幅度的增加，
more
居民
investment,
消费
by
会
companies
回归常态。
and residential consumption returning back to normal can be
我们也回
expected.
顾了过去10年，中国的 GDP
Over the
从
past 10
54
years,
万亿元
China's
增加
GDP
到
grew from
121万亿元，
54 trillion to
人均寿
121 trillion
命
yuan.
从74.8岁
Average life
提高
expectancy
到
rose
去年
from
的78.2岁，
74.8 to
对
78.2
世界
years
经济增长
last
的
year,
贡献，去年达到
and
36%
contribution
左
to the
右。
global growth last year reached around
能够取
36%.
得这样的成绩，我们认为至少有5点
There
经
are
验
at。least 5 things that we always bear in mind in making such
第一
achievements.
必须坚持发展是第一要务，
We must always take
坚
economic
持以经济
development
建
as the
设为
primary
中
and
心。
central task.
在新的形势下，要
Under the
全
new
面准
circumstances,
确贯彻新的发展
Guided
理
by the
念，
philosophy of innovative,
坚持
coordinated, green,
创
open,
新、
and
协
shared
调、绿
development,
色、开放、共享，有力推动
high
经
quality
济高质
economic
量发展。
development must always be our goal.
第二，必须坚持
Second,
社会主义市场经济
We must
改革
always
方向，
make establishing a socialist
充分
market
发挥
economy
市
the
场
direction
在
of
资
our
源配
reform.
置中的基础性作用，同时呢，也要
We
更好
must
地
let the
发挥
market play
政
a
府的作
fundamental
用。
role in resource
现
allocation.
在有人
And
说
let the government
中国
play a better
要搞
role.
计划经济，这是
Some
根
people
本不
say
可
that
能的。
China will go for the planned
中国人
economy.
民
That
是不
is by
会
no
走
means
这条路
possible.
的。我们要坚定不移深化国有企业
We
改
will stay
革
committed，
毫不动摇地
deepening
支持
SOE reform，
民营经济的
support
发展
the
壮大
private。sector
我
and
们
their
要
growth,
保护竞争，反对垄断，保护产
promote
权
fair，competition,
全面地弘扬企业家精神。
oppose monopoly, and champion entrepreneurship.
第三，必须坚持全方位扩大对外
We
开
must
放。
always promote all-round opening up.
对外开放是中国的基本国策，
Opening up
开放
as a
是
basic
促
state
进
policy
中国的改革
is a
发
catalyst
展、
of
推动
reform
经济
and
进步的
development
重要
in
动力。
China, and
中
a
国的
key
大
driver
门
of
只能
economic
越
progress.
开越大。
China's door to the outside world will only
第
open
四
wider.
我们必须坚持依法治国，
We must
坚
always
定地保
uphold
护
the rule of law.
产权、知识产权
We，must protect
努力营造
property rights and
市场
IPRs
化、
in
法
accordance
治
with the
化
law.
国际化
We
的
must
营
create
商
a
环境。
world-class and market-oriented business
无论
environment
是政府行
underpinned
为
by a sound legal
还是
framework.
市场行为，都必须在法
Both
治的轨
government
道上
and
运
market
行。
activities must stay within the confines of law.
第五，必须坚持创新驱动发展，
We must pursue innovation-driven
大力
development.
推动创新，发展教育，
We should
高度
promote
重视
innovation
人力
and
资本的
education,
提升，
grow human
重视
capital,
金融、科技
Foster
产业的
a
三角
sound
循环，
interaction of finance,
努
technology,
力提高
and industry,
劳动生产
and
率。
work to boost productivity.
女士们、先生们、朋友们，
Ladies
这
and
些经
gentlemen
验
and friends,
是我们从改革开
the
始
above 5
到现
points
在一直坚持的经验。
are the important experience we have learned
我们
and
必须
gained since
长
China
期的
started
坚 持
its reform and
毫
opening
不
up.
动摇。
We must stick to them and never waver in our
在
commitment.
这里，我也想简要介绍3个中国
Let
经
me
济
also
的具体
briefly
问
touch
题
upon。3 issues
第
about the
一，
Chinese
关
economy.
于防范化解金融风险，
First,
特别是
where
房
we
地
are
产
in resolving
近来
financial
发
risks,
生的风险。
those in the real estate
第
sector in
二是
particular.
中国促进
Second,
经济
our
双
thinking
循环的考
on
虑。
the dual
第
circulation,
三，关于推
Third,
动共同
the
富裕
rationale
的
behind
考虑。
China's goal of common prosperity.
过去5年，中国出现了一些金融风险，这是由于
The financial
宏观
risks
经济
that
下
emerged
行、
in China over the past 5 years
金融监
are
管
a
不
result
严、
of multiple factors,
经
including
营主体
macroeconomic
盲目
downturn,
扩张、
loose
内
financial
部人控制
supervision,
等因素
imprudent
共
business
同造
expansion,
成的。
and insider control.
我们打了一场攻坚战，
We fought
果
a tough
断处
battle
置了一
to
批
address these
高
risks.
风险大型企业集
We
团，
dealt with conglomerates
处置高风险
as well
中
as
小金融机
small
构，
and medium-sized
处置
financial
不良资
institutions
产，
of high risks,
压缩
disposed of
影子
distressed
银行的规
assets,
模，
curbed shadow
并且
banking
应对了
activities,
资本市场的异常波
and
动。
handled unusual volatility
经
in
过
the
努
capital
力
market.
中国的金融体系总体保持了稳
Thanks to
健，
these efforts,
我
we
们
have
守住了
managed to
不发
maintain
生系
overall
统性
financial
风险的
stability
底线。
and prevented systemic risks.
目前正在制定金融稳定法，为
We
下
are
一步
drafting
化
the
解
financial
金融风
stability
险
law、right now,
维护
which is
金融稳
expected
定，
to
提供
provide
法治保障。
legal safeguards for diffusing risks and maintaining financial
房地
stability
产
as we go
在
forward.
中国是重要的支柱产业，
The real estate
但
sector
是从
is still a
2021年以
pillar
来
for China's economy.
发生了一些变化，
but there have been
与
changes
房地产
since
相关的贷款
2021.
占银行贷款的40%， 房地产相关的收入占地方财政的收入约50%，
Around 50% of
房
overall
地产
local
占
government fiscal
城镇居民
resources
资产的60%，
and
所以我们高度
60%
重
of
视
urban
发
household
生的这些变
assets.
化，包括
Therefore,
价
we pay
格
much
和销
attention
售急剧
to
下
the
降。
changes that have taken place,
房地
including
产企
a
业
rapid
普遍
decline
出
in
现了
property
流动性
prices and
不
home
畅，
sales. Many
资产
property
负债表
developers
恶化，
suffered from liquidity
个别头
shortage
部企业
and
面
deteriorating
临着
balance
重
sheet.
大的风险。
The risks of a handful of
我
leading
们认
property
为，
developers
如果
are
处理不当，
particularly noticeable.
很容易引发系统性
If
的
not
风险。
handled properly,
所以，
risks
我们果
in
断
the
出
housing
手，
sector
及
are
时
likely
干
to
预，
trigger systemic risks. That is why
同
prompt
时
steps must be
注意处理
taken
好
to address them.
防范系统风险和道德风
That
险的
said,
关系。
while doing so, we should also prevent possible moral
具体
hazards.
做法是：第一，
Here is
通
what we
过
have done.
保护契约
First,
和产权，稳定
We have
市场的
stabilized
预期。
expectations by honoring
我
contracts
们
and
针对
protecting property
涉及全
rights.
国188万居民的2600
For the
个
2,600 plus pre-sold
付款
but unfinished
但未
housing
交付使
projects
用的项
that
目，
concern
从保交楼
1.88 million
入手
people across the country,
加以
we have
干预
made，ensuring
从
their
而避
delivery
免了
a
市
priority.
场的恐慌，
And this helped prevent
第
panic
二，
in the market.
做了大量的输血，
Second, we have conducted
改
massive
善
blood
房地产企业的
transfusion
流动
to the
性，
real estate
主
sector.
要包括提供
The
商业
liquidity
银行贷款，
situation of real estate companies has
为
been greatly
房企
enhanced
发债
by
提
way
供
of
必要的
fresh
担
bank
保，
lending, bond
促
issuance
进股
guarantee,
权融资等等。
and equity financing.
第三，放松在房地产市场过热期间采取的一些管制的
We have
举
relaxed
措，从而
restrictions
有效地
that were once
扩大需求，
introduced to addressing the overheating in the property
使房地
market
产公司
to
具备
effectively
造血
expand
的功能。
demand and
通过这些努
enable
力，
property
我们看
developers
到
to
最近以
generate
来，
revenue.
中国的市场在房地产方面
Thanks to
已经
these
出现
efforts,
了明显的变化。
The property market in China
从未来
has
来
seen
看，
noticeable
中国
improvement.
仍处于城市化较快的发
Looking
展阶
ahead,
段。
China's
巨大的
urbanization
需求潜
is still
力
on a fast
将为
track,
房地产行
and the
业健
enormous
康发展
potential demand
提供
generated
有力的
in
支
this
撑。
process will provide a strong underpinning
当
for the
前，
development
中
of
国
the
正
real
在
estate
构
sector.
建以国内大循环为主体、
Right now,
国内国际
China is
双
stepping up
循环
efforts
互相
to
促
foster a new
进的
development
新发展
paradigm
格
with
局。
domestic circulation as the mainstay
国内循
and
环的
domestic
重
and
点
international
是
circulations
扩大内
reinforcing
需
each other.
完善
The
产业
focus
体
of
系，
domestic circulation is on
努力
expanding
形 成
internal demand,
以消费拉动为主
promoting
的
industrial
增
upgrade,
长模
developing a
式，
consumption-led growth model,
从而推动经济实现再平衡。
and rebalancing
关
the
于这个
economy.
逻辑呢，就是从2008年国际金融发生危机以后，
This
整个国际社会
is a
形
logic
成的共识，
reflecting international consensus
中国
since the
要
financial crisis
加快
in
再平衡，
2008.
美国也要再平衡，整个世界
China
经
needs
济
to
都
rebalance,
要再
so
平衡。
does the United States. The world economy
顺畅的
needs
国内
a
循环
rebalancing.
特别需要加强国内
However,
分工和
For
合作，
domestic circulation to
扩大
function
对外
well,
贸易
it must
和
rely
利
on
用外
international
资。
division of labor and cooperation, as well as
我
more
们说
foreign
的新
trade
发展
and
格局
investment.
是开放的
Therefore,
国内国际
The
双
new
循环。
development paradigm
中国的
of
基本
dual
国情
circulation
决定了必须
is
对
to be
外开放，
pursued in
必
open
须不断
economy.
地提高
China's
开放
national
的指
reality
令、
dictates
质
that
量和水
opening up to the
平。
world is a must,
我
not
们坚
an
决反
expediency.
对
We
单
must
边
open
主
up
义，
wider
反
and make
对
it work
保护
better.
主义。
We
我们
oppose
也希望
unilateralism and
全面地
protectionism
加强国际合作，
and look forward to
希望
strengthening
共同维护
comprehensive
世界经
international
济
cooperation
稳定
with
发
all
展，
countries
推动经济
for world
实现再全
economic
球化。
stability and development and the promotion of economic
中国已经全面
re-globalization.
建成小康社会，实现共同富裕
Now that China has
是我们
completed
提出的
the mission of
长期
building a
的
moderately
社会
prosperous
的发
society
展目
in all
标。
respects, we have come up with a new
这是
social
一项
development goal of
实
achieving
现
common
长治
prosperity.
久安的历史性任务，但是呢，
A
它
historic
是长
mission
期的
that will，help
需要
us
一步
ensure
一步的加以
lasting
实
stability.
现，
It
不
is a
可
long-term
能
task
一蹴
that
而
requires
就。
an incremental and gradual
我们
approach.
讲的共同
It is
富
not
裕，
something to be achieved
强调的
overnight.
是避免两极分
Common
化，
prosperity, as we see it, is aimed at
最
preventing
终还是要
polarization.
靠共同发展，靠全社
It
会
can only be
每个
attained
成员的
through
艰苦
common
奋斗
development
和
and the
劳动
hard
致
work
富。
of
我们
every
绝不搞
Chinese.
平均主义。
Common prosperity is by no means a synonym of egalitarianism or
随着中国
welfareism.
发展，全民富裕程度不断
As
提
China
高，
grows, all
但
Chinese
是
people
在任何
will be
情
better
况
off.
下，人们的收入水平
But that
都会
doesn't
存在
mean
差距。
their incomes and level of prosperity
也就
have
是
to be the
说
same.，
我们强调机会的平等，而不可
That is to
能
say,
完全做到结果的
There will
平
be
等。
equal opportunities, but no
在推动
guarantee
共同
of
富裕
equal
的历史过
outcomes.
程中，我们认为，包括外商在内的企业家
Entrepreneurship
将发挥
is a key
非常
factor for
关
wealth
键的
creation of a
发动机
society.
的作用。
Therefore, entrepreneurs, both
因
Chinese
为
and foreign,
他们是社
will
会
play
财富
an
创
important
造的
role
关
as
键
the
要素。
engine driving
如
China's
果
historical
没有
pursuit
财富
of
的积
common
累，
prosperity.
共同富裕就会成为无源
If
之水
wealth doesn't、
无
grow,
本之木。
common prosperity will become a river
女士
without
们、
source
先生们、
or
朋
a
友
tree
们，
without
在
roots.
分裂的世界中加
Ladies and
强
gentlemen,
国际合
friends,
加强
the
合
theme of
作
this meeting,
这个主题
cooperation
具有
in a fragmented
鲜明
world,
的现实针对性。
is highly relevant.
习近平主席指出，当前
As
世界
President Xi
之
Jinping
变、
noted,
时代之变、
changes
历
of
史
our
之
world,
变，
of our times,
正在以前所未有的方式展
are
开。
unfolding in front
世
of us
界又一
in
次
an
站在
unprecedented
历史
way.
的十字路口，
The
何去
world
何从，
has
取
once
决
again
于
come
各国
at
人
a
民的
historical
选择。
crossroad, and its future depends on
关
the
于如
choices
何
we make.
加强世界的合作问题，
As for
我
how
想
to
提出
advance
3点观
international
察。
cooperation, I'd like to share
第
with
一
you
呢，
the following three
需要坚
observations.
持正确的原则，
First,
维
we
护
need to
有效
uphold
的
the
国
right
际
principles
经济秩
and
序。
maintain the effective international
面对
economic
新的
order.
形势，传统的思维方式
Under the
无
new
法提供
circumstances,
出路，
the traditional way of thinking
需要
cannot
放弃
provide a solution.
冷战思维，从物质二向性的
We have to abandon
角度
the Cold
认
War
识
mentality,
事物的本质，
try
着
to
眼于
understand
建立
the essence of
人类
things from the
命运
perspective
共同体，
of material duality,
携手应对
endeavor to
全球
build a
性
community
挑
with a
战。
shared future for mankind, and join
我们
hands
始
to
终认
respond
为，
to global
合理
challenges.
的国际经济秩序
We believe
必须
that
共
an
同维护。
equitable international economic order
关
must
于
be preserved by all of
国
us.
际分工，关于鼓励竞争、反对垄断，关于保护
International
产
division
权
of
和知识
labor,
产权，
encouragement of
关于弘
competition,
扬企业家精神，
anti-monopoly, protection
关
of
于促
property
进
rights
要
and
素自由流
IPRs,
动，
promoting
坚持公平
entrepreneurship
分配，
and free flow of production
关于完
factors,
善宏观
fair
经济
distribution,
管理，完善社会安全网等
ensuring
经济原
macroeconomic
理并
stability
没有改变
and。a strong social safety net
政府
are still
应该在
economic
重大问
principles
题上
that are
发
relevant
挥作用
today.。The
面
government
对
has a key
暂
role
时
to
出
play
现的阻
on
力
major
和倒
issues.
退，我
Despite
们应当
temporary
勇于坚
resistance
持
and
真
some
理，
setbacks, we must have
尊
the
重规
courage
律，
to uphold
用
truth and law of
朴
economics
实的办法
and
解决
address
复杂的问
complex
题。
issues in a pragmatic way with
第
plain
二，
and simple
加
solutions.
强国际宏观经济政策协调，
Second, we
平
need to
衡好
strengthen
治理通
international
胀
macro
和
policy
促进经
coordination
济增长
and
的关
strike
系
a。good balance
目
between
前，
inflation
一
and
些国
growth.
家采取了应对通胀的思路，也就是
To
说，
tame inflation,
通胀、加息、
Some
衰退、
countries
复
have
苏。
chosen the policy that will
需
likely
要注意
result
的是，
in the
本
height
轮通
recession
胀
recovery
是
loop.
复合性的通
But
胀
it is important，to
成因
note
比较复杂
that，inflation this time
所以我
around
们认
is
为
driven by
除了
multiple
需求侧的
factors,
管理，
which
需
is
要
why it is
重
complicated.
视供需两
Apart from
端
the
共
demand
同发
side,
力，同步
Supply
修
side
复
measures
产业
are
链、
also
供应
needed
链。
to repair the
我们应
supply
当高度
chains
重视能源安 全、
and preserve
粮食安全、
energy and food security.
共同推动国际合作，共同维护世界和平，合理应对共同的挑战。我们也呼吁大国在加息的同时，应当高度重视对新兴市场国家可能产生的外溢影响，防止加重债务和金融风险。我们也同意和各个方面一道，推动解决一些发展中国家面临的债务难题。第三，积极应对全球气候变化。世界上多数国家都已经认识到气候变化极端的重要性和紧迫性。我们现在需要采取共同行动。新冠病毒流行以后，我们开始思考气候变化和公共卫生危机是否存在一些关联。在这个问题上，我们也需要开展有效的国际合作。中国将坚守对国际社会做出的承诺，积极推动气候变化领域的各项国际合作，共同有效地应对气变带来的诸多的严峻的挑战。在分裂的世界中加强合作，是我们面临的尖锐问题。我们应当坦诚地面对分裂的状态，深入分析造成这种现象的原因，提倡正和博弈，找到有可能扩大合作的共同点，探索扩大合作的有效机制，坚定地维护世界和平。我非常感谢这次论坛为我们提供了这样一个机会，我由衷祝愿本次论坛圆满成功，对推进分裂的世界中的国际和平和国际合作，我们愿意做出贡献。谢谢大家的倾听，谢谢大家。
Thank you very much, Vice Premier. We have time also for 2 questions. And I would like to follow up what you mentioned at the end and come back to China's carbon neutrality goal. China has announced its goal to be carbon neutral by 2060 and to make in such a way a strong contribution to the achievement of the Paris objectives. But what are the practical decisive steps that must be taken? And you mentioned already, what role does global collaboration play? Could you elaborate a little bit further, please?
Okay. 非常感谢Schwab 主席提出的问题。
Thank you, Dr. Schwab,
Thank
for
you
your
so much
question.
for your questions. So may I answer in Chinese instead of English? 关于3060这个目标，是中国政府
Carbon peak before 2030 and carbon neutrality before 2060 are solemn commitments the Chinese government made to the world, and we will strive to achieve them.
从目前的情况来看呢，主要做法包括几个方面。
To achieve that, we are making efforts in a number of aspects.
能源结构。
First,
我们将
we are
大
adjusting
力
energy
地发展
structure.
可再生的新能源，提高它的比
We
重。
will increase the share
同时
of
呢，
renewable
我
and
们
new
将
energy.
着力改造和传统能源，提高传统能源的效率。
And enhance
在
the
这里呢，可
efficiency
能
of traditional
碳
energy.
捕捉技术 including carbon capture, storage. These are important. In the meantime, China's national reality dictates that we also need to promote safe and clean use of nuclear power. Second, we will focus on key areas of carbon reduction.
有些行业呢，如果能抓住，我们将降低排放的80%。
If we can focus on these key areas, we are able to cut 80% of emissions, including power generation, construction materials, steel.
还有呢，
we are also promoting
的制造业进行绿色的改造。
the change of consumption behavior and make changes to the traditional manufacturing sector.
制度性的安排非常重要。
Third, we think institutional arrangements
已经制定了
are
1+N 的政策体系。
We have made a 1+N
那么现在呢，
policy
我们在推动碳交易市场的建设，
we are promoting the
在推
building
动
of
绿色金融的
carbon
发展
trade。and green finance.
这个与此同时呢，在政府的公共投资、在税收制度的安排等各个方面，我们都会做出努力。
We will also make efforts
第4点呢，就像您刚才问的，我们必须全力的开展国际合作。在这方面呢，我们和美国有直接的国际合作，包括在 UN 的框架下。 在 APEC 框架下，在 G20 框架下，我们建立了一系列合作机制。我们和欧盟已经开展诸多的国际合作，包括在有些城市和工业园区进行试点，在技术领域进行合作，我们也会继续推动的。我们和大量的新兴市场国家、发展中国家也在进行合作，比如说。 在“一带一路”，我们停止了所有的境外的煤炭发电的项目，我们也愿意对发展中国家提供呢融资的帮助。在这个问题上呢，我想再向您报告一点，就是关于中国式的现代化问题。因为这个碳中和是我们的国际义务。 同时呢，也是中国的一个发展的内生性的要求。也就是说呢，不是别人要我们做，而是中国必须做。中国人多地少，这个初级产品供应需要国际交换，但是呢，又有大量的庞大的制造业，而且工业化、这个城镇化在推动的过程中。 在这种情况下，我们必须全面的改变发展方式，全面的推进一个绿色的这个发展模式。我也注意到这个斯恩先生也在，我也非常欣赏前一段他和朱明先生和菲格斯先生一块儿提的这种绿色的范式转化，我认为非常重要。 总而言之呢，在中国这个推动碳排放、碳中和，对中国的生存发展是至关重要的。我们也提倡山水林田湖草沙一体化治理。提倡呢，绿水青山就是金山银山。提倡呢，中国的居民。 中国的生产必须全面绿色转型。我想呢，我先简要的回答这个问题。如果有任何新的问题，我也愿意回答。谢谢你啊。
Thank you.
Vice Premier, in this context, we appreciate very much China's commitment to plant, in the framework also of our 1 trillion trees project, to plant, I think, 65 billion trees in the coming years.
Yes, exactly.
Now, I have a question which certainly everybody is keenly interested, Vice Premier, because there have been so many different reports about the COVID situation in China, creating concerns about the health situation, of course, the impact on economic growth potential, and of course the resilience and reliance on supply chains. Could you enlighten us what the situation is and what can we expect of the final, if I may say so, normalization of the situation?
Thank you so much for your question. If I may, I still want to answer it in Chinese. As you mentioned, okay, 就是像你所说的，我们这个全面的动态清零的防疫政策，转向了治疗重症的防疫政策。
Shifting our focus from dynamic zero COVID to the prevention of severe cases. It started on 8th December last year, and since 8th January this year, we have started to manage COVID as a Class B infectious disease. That is a signal of reopening. First, the COVID situation is steady. China has passed the infection peak. Members of the society have returned to normal. There's a short span of time between infection peak and the returning to normal, which somehow is beyond our expectations. Second, living and production have been fully restored. Catering, tourism, and other consumption have been restored to normal. I have received quite surprising number from the Transportation Department. This year's Chinese Spring Festival will see some 5 billion trips made, which is an enormous scale. That is why I said just now that life has been restored to normal in China. Third, the priority is still on the elderly, those with underlying conditions, including diabetes, high blood pressure, etc. Now we are working to address these priorities. As things stand, hospitals, hospital beds, doctors, nurses, medicine, supply of these factors can be ensured. Finally, for all of you, my foreign friends, you are most welcome to visit China. The policy we are taking right now is travelers only need 48-hour PCR test results upon entry. And there is no quarantine, no other additional requests.
我们非常欢迎广大国际的朋友
All of you, friends from the international community, are most welcome to visit China. We will provide you with the best services. On certain issues, we need some time for transition, but overall, there is no problem. I met a number of old friends yesterday. They told me that they want to visit China for the Boao Forum for Asia, for the high-level forum for development.
我感谢您提出这个问题，谢谢您。
Have been normalized. Thank you for your question, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Premier. We highly appreciate that you came here to Davos actually just before the Spring Festival starts. You came here with important delegation. Thank you for sharing with us the latest policies of the Chinese government of China. And I think on behalf of all of us, I want to wish you a good year of the rabbit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
没看过这样的莎莎，原来运动帽戴起来可以那么性感。一顶运动帽，看见中天小清新加于另一种风情。粉红色特别适合沉浸在幸福里的请教官。小豪主播安静下来，把 C 位让给运动帽。中天文创品牌 Keep Going 系列运动休闲帽，个性黑、樱花粉、奶茶色3款配色即可入手，请上快点购。有您的支持，中天 Keep Going。